Oh, a beautiful day here in the Florida Keys and wherever you're at. I hope that it is for you too. Today, on this sit and talk, we're going to talk about an issue that I see with that younger guitar players very well could be dealing with. And that's the fact that back in Nashville, Tennessee, that I believe the biggest problem that you would find there are having access to the legends to learn from. Whether it would be legends such as an actual country music artist, like a little Jimmy Dickens or a Porter Wagner, or the ones that have obviously passed on to be with Lord, and the other ones that are still active in the scene of country music, but not necessarily doing anything downtown Nashville that would give you access to them. That's just if they're artists, never mind the guitar players that are simply not there anymore that were legendary guitar players. From the people like Red Volkart to Leon Rhodes to Jimmy Capps to you name it. The people all the way from, I would say, probably the early 2000s and backwards, so set the people that would have made music in the late 50s, 60s, 70s, and the 80s, they were still accessible when I came to Nashville in 1979, 1980. 1980, November of, was my very first time to ever play in Nashville. I was 12 years old, and I simply walked with my fiddle and my case down Printer's Alley to the very end of it and walked into a place called the Possum Holler, which was Jerry Lee Lewis's club, the piano player, the Killer. Walked in, middle of nobody. First of all, this is Nashville, 1980, Thanksgiving time, and there was nobody on that dreary, overcast day. But I remember it very well, and I simply walked into the Possum Holler, and on stage was sitting a cross-legged fellow with a Telecaster, dialing in some sounds on a Fender Twin that was on the back of a chair, how they angle them back there. And I walked up to him. I said, "Sir, I'd like to play some music with you." And he said, "Well, boy, can you play that?" And I whipped out the fiddle and tried to do something fancy to impress him. And I did enough that he said, "Well, come on back when it's showtime in a couple hours and we'll get you up and do a few." And I did. And I would end up playing the rest of that evening time. But that was actually, the guitar player was actually Michael Twitty, Conway Twitty's son. And he was there playing with the Twitty Birds, which were Conway's band, which were off the road because it was holiday season and they weren't touring. And Nashville was full of those kind of opportunities and has been since I first got there in 1980 through the 90s for sure, where you could walk into a place like Robert's Western Wear or the Demon's Den, where I would go later that same day in 1980 starting at 10:30 at night and play till 3 o'clock in the morning as a 12-year-old kid with two men. A man that was on guitar and a man that was on bass. And I walked in just like I did at the Possum Holler and said, "Hey, I'd like to play some music with you." And the guy looked at me and said, "Well, boy, can you play drums?" And I said, "Well, sure." And that was the first time I ever sat behind a kit. I'd seen it done. And I never had sat behind a kit to ever play it much, but man, it just made sense. And that was the first time I ever ate biscuits and gravy. And it was at the Demon's Den, Merchant's Hotel. The Merchant's Hotel is still there, the Demon's Den, and all of Nashville's totally changed. Nashville was boarded up in 1980. It was nothing but boarded up places, except places like Tootsie's and all the dives that were sustaining some type of existence for the people that were off the road and needing to either play or have a place to play for next to nothing, and most of the times literally next to nothing. But as I watch young YouTubers that claim to be Nashville guitarists, and to whatever degree that they are or not, I can't tell you because I don't watch enough of their content to experience their releases all the time of what they're putting out to know exactly what they're doing. And the reason for me is that they're just basically telling me how difficult it is to live in Nashville and how difficult it is to park, and how Nashville. And I understand that Nashville's totally changed. And I'm not a 30-year-old guitar player anymore. But when I was a 30-year-old guitar player, I could go down to Nashville, Tennessee, and I could go get a lesson from a legend that was playing somewhere down there. And it was an applicable lesson, meaning that I could walk in and watch Red Volkart play at Skull's Orchard room, the Rainbow Room. And then a day later, try to do what Red did in the atmosphere I would be playing, whether if it was a VFW or it was, you know, some old country music legend that I was trying to play for, because he was playing music that I was going the way that I wanted to play and the kind of music that I was wanting to play. But today's big guitar heroes in Nashville, a person like Guthrie Trapp, who has, you know, set the world on fire with his the world of Nashville, Tennessee on fire with bringing instrumentals back and the opportunity for somebody to be a young guitar player and have access to truly a fine guitar player as Guthrie is, or every once in a while a Tom Bukovac, or you know, the people that of the now of Nashville. Well, you can go watch Guthrie at the Underdog every Monday. But if you're a 30-year-old guitar player trying to make it in Nashville, Tennessee, under the umbrella of the artists that are making that music, that you will be basically a flea on the dog, right? Because that's what a lead guitar player is. He's a flea on the dog. You get the dog being the artist, and then that dog needs, you know, a host of things to help him be that artist. But, you know, those interchangeable parts don't stay like they used to, number one. Number two, go listen to Guthrie Trapp on Monday, get all inspired, and then go sit and play today's kind of country music, which is a far cry from traditional country music. And I realize that music has evolved throughout the decades, from the 20s, starting with Jimmy Rogers, when it was the beginning conception of country music, all the way to Ernest Tubb, and then the honky tonk coming into play in the 40s, and then of course Hank Williams and Lefty Frizzell. Listen, I know my country music history. I've been fortunate to play with a lot of country music legends: Little Jimmy Dickens, Porter Wagner, Kitty Wells, Ray Price. No point in even going on. There's been so blessed and fortunate, so I know my history out of necessity to have the jobs that I've had. The Drifting Cowboys, of which I was a member of. Hank Williams' legendary Drifting Cowboys, of which were two original members. And I was fortunate to be a young guitar picker in that. But all that to say, if you go downtown Nashville today, what are you going to see? Because people like Brent Mason, who might have been an inspiration to you, and as he has been for all of us, he doesn't play downtown. He used to play downtown, but he doesn't play downtown anymore. He doesn't go to Nashville because, as some of the youth has pointed out, you can't even park downtown Nashville. It's a mess to go downtown Nashville. Never mind the music that you're listening to that represents what today's country music is. So if you are a 30-year-old guitar player in Nashville, Tennessee, where does your inspiration lie? When I was 30, man, it was everywhere. Go to the Grand Ole Opry with frequency and see Leon Rhodes, Jimmy Capps. And then any of the hotshot guitar players who might be showing up with, you know, the latest and greatest act. If Merle Haggard came in, then Red Volkart would be there. We get a chance to work studio projects where I'm, you know, listening to the recording and there's Brent Mason playing. And you'll be inspired to hear that kind of stuff, or, you know, to sit amongst legendary players. What a big privilege and an honor, you know, to spend time with Owen Bradley, who produced Patsy Cline and Jim Reeves. And if you don't know Mr. Bradley's body of work, do yourself a favor, look him up. He's one of the most legendary producers of all time. One of the main foundational elements in Nashville, Tennessee. Chet Atkins. I got blessed to spend time with somebody like Chet Atkins. And at any one given moment, the questions of a young guitarist's mind, or a young producer's mind, or a young performer's mind, I had that Mount Everest the Mount Rushmores of the industry at my disposal. And if it exists today in Nashville, I'm not aware of it. I am aware that the people that could still do it, like a Vince Gill, he doesn't go downtown Nashville with any frequency unless it's to perform, at the Ryman Auditorium or, across the street at the big facility there where they have the giant concerts. But, the days of, I can remember seeing Vince playing at Legends on the corner downtown Nashville, and it would be nothing to go into the Bluegrass Inn and there'd be Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass. And there'd be nobody. I can remember going to see him and literally be 6 people in the audience. And I realized that the world has changed and these cell phones and allow social media to happen to so many and let everybody know what you're engaged with at that moment, and that wow factor happens. But back then, you really had to, all you had to do is go participate. Just make the effort, park the car and start walking the streets and sticking your head in Tootsie's or Robert's Western Wear or across at the Demon's Den or all these places, and you'd be looking in, and the chances are you were going to see somebody that would not only inspire you, that was elevated in their ability to do what they were doing, that you probably more than likely heard of in one form or fashion, but you then could apply it. And like I'm saying, think about this. Let's pretend that Guthrie Trapp or Tom Bukovac are going to be playing a show at 3rd and Lindsley in Nashville. Well, obviously as a guitar player, I'm going to be inspired to watch that. But if I'm trying to work on Broadway or in the music scene in Nashville, where can I apply the likes of Guthrie Trapp or the likes of a Tom Bukovac, even if I could get close to what they could kind of do? Because the music that's being created today doesn't call for that depth of guitar or even that style of guitar. It's much more of a, Southern rock meets pop meets a far cry from what I call country music. I work on it and with it to this day. I'm still very actively involved in the music that I'm involved with. The people that I work for, I'm blessed to work quite a bit, but I have blinders on to the rest of it. I just simply do not have a dog in the hunt. I don't need to anymore. I haven't had to for a very long time. The services I provide, from mixing, mastering, overdubbing, that world now comes to me, and I'm very grateful to that. But, I had help getting to where I'm at today from the sit and talks of legends. Can you imagine riding in the car with little Jimmy Dickens, who was probably more famous than anybody for the longest time in his life? He was little Jimmy Dickens at the age of 4. And I can remember taking him to his 70th class reunion, just him and I driving to West Virginia, and just me asking Mr. Jim all kinds of stories, and me looking at all 4'11" of them in my big 1999 Suburban. Just how it was funny, that image, big truck and little Mr. Jim right there. And I handed him the video camera so he could tell me about where he was from here in West Virginia, and he's narrating, and he's looking over here, but the camera the whole time, he's so short, it's just focusing on the dash. But he's talking, saying that's where the doctor that delivered me lived, and here's the high school, and just all that kind of stuff. And when you have access to things like that, it just you can't help but be influenced to have a lot clearer, better understanding, especially when the geographical location of what you're wanting to know is a place like Nashville, Tennessee, and these are the people that raised it to be what it was. And I believe that's the problem in Nashville today. As a young guitarist, as a musician, as an artist, I really personally believe that there's just simply no legends left that you have access to, whether they've passed on or the ones that are left simply just do not participate. The ones that have any type of history that is beyond 20 years, which is getting to be rare. It's not like every artist has a 20-year career. That used to be a norm for artists and acts. 20 years wasn't. Man, I played with people, Mr. Dickens for one of them, Mr. Helms, 50, 60 years doing what they done under the umbrella of how they did it. But now, as one guitarist I've watched that his YouTube channel, he likes to say, well, I've done so much, and I've been here almost a decade. I mean, almost a decade is what? What would you say almost a decade is? 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, what? And in almost a decade, his claim is that he's just done it all in Nashville. And my gosh, I'm praying for that young man, because he's in his 30s, and I hope there's more for him in the attainment and the pursuit. I realize that nothing can be that he can do as any of us can about when we were born. But I am so grateful to have had access to so many people that when I was a kid, that later on, and a kid reading those album liner notes and seeing a name like Buddy Harmon or Weldon Myrick or Cowboy Eddie Long or Reggie Young, and then years later sitting and there's Hargus Pig Robbins, Weldon, John Huey, and gosh, and the people that made the music of my youth that I love. But so to me, that's what the problem is. That's what Nashville's biggest problem is the legends that are no longer there educating this next batch of youth to go forward. And the youth have a tendency to claim extreme knowledge based upon a little bit of experience, as far as I'm concerned. I deal with a lot of young artists, and it continually amazes me how things are presented with authority based upon opinion, not authority based upon experience. And I think it's good to have an opinion, but I think it's way better to have your opinion based upon experience. It's always my prayer for anybody that's following this pursuit of music, because it is based upon a dream most of the time, a hope, a desire. And for me, I've been blessed to have end results that have allowed me to experience things and people that I would have never had a chance any other way. And to me, that's truly a gift. One of the biggest things that I take away from the legends that I've learned things from wasn't so much what to do, but it was really truly what not to do. They were always eager to share with me the things that they should not, or they wish they had not done. Sometimes in confidence, because I would know a lot of these people as friends, people that would call me to do things beyond music, things that would just be private, personal, family things, or gatherings, and I would be fortunate to have a relationship with many of those people, to have that type of a relationship. But also too, as a young person in the business of Nashville, I also took an interest in their older music. So therefore, when the turnaround from analog to digital happened, I was on the very front end of the computer crossover, where instead of being on 2-inch tapes anymore, things started getting recorded on a computer, and I was on the very front of that, and having access to a lot of people and artists and legends that were no longer viable on top 40 radio by today's standard, but they still had an incredible touring career that was based upon years and years of being who they had been and who they still were in the eyes of the people who would come and see them. And therefore they were able to do their 100 to 150, 200 dates a year, a fair in Wisconsin, or go play the Dells in Wisconsin and Baraboo, and go through Minnesota and all the way up through Pennsylvania and all the way out to Nebraska. And you could be in a strong touring act with a sensible business model, and yet had not had a record since the 60s. But that record would have made such an imprint that people would still come, because the fans that you made and that they made were so loyal. And now, music is obviously different. It's delivered different, it's accessed different, and the meaning of music, well, that's for the person who's listening it to tell you. I can surely tell you that what I hear today has nothing that grabs me. And I'm not telling you that it's no good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just telling you It doesn't move me, and so therefore it's very formatic, and I understand it. I play on a lot of this stuff in terms of the demos. I don't very rarely do master stuff anymore when it comes to the people that are doing the latest and greatest that might be released. But that whole music scene has changed. It's changed incredibly, even how you would put the concept of an album or a release together. I'm fortunate because I still do a lot of consultation where people ask me my opinion about why something will work, or more so really why it's going to fail. And that is something I have a lot of history on, because it had been given to me by people like Mr. Owen Bradley, who would take the time to tell me why a business model based upon the presentation of a song and the marketing of a song, why it would work or wouldn't work in his day of doing something at the highest level. And my gosh, that was like giving the keys to the library to a 20-year-old, 25-year-old. And point being about this is that it'd be hard to have access to the legends that remain in Nashville. Either, obviously the first thing, if somebody has passed away, then there you go. But the second thing is that there is simply anybody who's done anything in Nashville from 20 years ago that's still doing something. You simply don't have to go downtown to prove yourself anymore. So you don't, because Nashville has become a place where you simply don't want to engage. I don't go downtown Nashville, Tennessee, unless it's 100% mandatory to what I'm needed to do. And that hasn't, anything I've needed to do that's been Nashville based has been truly on the outskirts. But boy, it'd be tough to be a 30-year-old, 25-year-old guitar player. And it's my prayer to them that they find that something that extends that opportunity to them to go that next level. I know that I could not have done what I've been blessed to do. I simply could not have done it by myself. And the sheer amount of people that helped me along the way, it's beyond words. But the one thing that the majority of them have in common, they are legends of the world of country music. Some of them in either other forms of music too. But all that to say, I think that's Nashville's biggest problem. But now, who knows what's next for this world of music? Whatever it is that you're doing, I hope you're enjoying your world of music. And I've been asked about this before, and I just wanted to take a moment on this beautiful day here in the Florida Keys to share that with you. Look at the beautiful Min Kitty out there enjoying her time in the sun, and share a little insight about what I believe the problem of Nashville, Tennessee is. But, to me, that also goes for, everything else. Having access to people who have vast amounts of experience that are willing to share it, that's a big key in it. It sure is. God bless you all. Thank you for the time you spent with me today on these Sit and Talks. They're not for everybody, but for those who have made it this far, thank you. And I look forward to talking to you again. Bye-bye.